Welcome in, everyone. Good evening. My name is Dr. Christine Moses, and I am your facilitator going forward. It is an honor for me to be here with you this evening, and I would love for us to go through the virtual meeting participation checklist. So next slide, please. So committee members, you know this well. People who are visiting for the first time, we have guidelines for the virtual meeting. Chat box is open for introductions and for noting public comment interest. All other times, host only chats. Please raise your hand. Raised hand used by the committee and presenters only. Video on for committee members and presenters, please. Microphones, please mute them until you are called on. Recording, this is according to city and state law. These meetings are public and are recorded. And captioning for this meeting is available when you use show subtitles. So we will be taking a break at 7 o'clock this evening, and public comment should start at about 6:12 or so. And these meetings are open to the public. So again, we're excited to continue this really important work. Next slide, please. So our agenda this evening is to welcome and do introductions, public comment, approval of meeting minutes, so this is an action item, proposed code amendment to allow the use of PCEF interest for fiscal year 25-26 budget, annual CIP update and progress timeline. We'll take a quick 5 to 10 minute break. We'll see where we are in the process. And then the CIP update continued, and then we'll have an action item for committee recruitment. And then we'll close the meeting at 8 o'clock. So thank you so much for this. Next slide, please. I would love, since I am your brand new facilitator, I would love for the committee members, please, to do a brief introduction, your name, your pronouns, and if you have a role on this committee, and one word about why this committee is so important to you. Just one word. So who is the first committee member that is going to volunteer and then toss it to the next committee member? Who's going to do that for me?
Only because D'Angelo's hand might be hidden. I just want to point D'Angelo.
I see. Thank
Oh,
you so much,
sorry.
D'Angelo. Yes.
No, I appreciate you recognizing. My name is D'Angelo Moaning, committee member. Great to see everybody here. If I had to choose one word that measures why this committee matters to me, I would have to say it's self-determination in terms of what it offers to impacted communities.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Welcome in. D'Angelo, who do you want to popcorn over to go next?
I see Megan on my screen, or Meg, I'm sorry. So I'll pop it to Meg.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Meg or Megan, either or, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm co-chair along with Ranfis and been on the committee for 5 years now. And my word would be thoughtful. And Robin, I see you on my screen, so I'll call on you.
Beautiful.
Good evening, everybody. Robin Wang, committee member, he, him, and my word is future. I'll pass it to Ranfis.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, and hi, Dr. Moses. My name is Ranfis Genovia Toro with Blue Green. Oh, sorry, committee member. Sorry, unraveling from my workday here. He and pronouns committee member, and the word I will use is transformational.
Beautiful.
And I will kick it over to Faith.
you.
Good evening, everyone. Faith Graham, she, her pronouns, committee member. The word I'm going to share is integrity. And Tracy, please.
Thank you, Faith. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Scott. I'm a committee member as well. I think the word I would use is accountability. And if I'm going by who is on camera, I'll hand it over to Alicia.
Hello, Dr. Moses. Hello, everyone. Alicia Chapman, she, her pronouns, committee member, and my word would be realistic.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I'm going to, who's still not gone from the committee? Maybe I'm the last one?
Sam, is that right? Last one?
Sam.
Beautiful.
Yep, getting there. Sorry, I'm muting. Yep, you were the last one.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so excited to work with you. This is going to be a wonderful, wonderful process. So let's continue on to the next slide. We are going to do a centering exercise just for a couple of minutes. We've had all sorts of busy days. I've been going since 6 o'clock this morning, and I really appreciate being able to center myself and get our heartbeats kind of in sync. So I am going to ask you, and this is just a couple of minutes, very brief. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes or gaze softly down. I invite you to place your hands on your lap. Feel your feet firmly planted on the floor. And just breathe. Feel your legs supported by the chair. And your low back supported by the chair. And let your shoulders drop down. I invite you to breathe in for 3, for a count of 3, and out for a count of 6. I'm going to do this once. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, and out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I invite you to open your eyes gently and slowly. Big stretch up. Ugh. Get that lymphatic system moving. Yay. Ah. Okay, here we are, nicely centered and ready to rock and roll. Next slide, please. Public comment. So, are there any people that would like to provide public comment? Please raise your hand, like Babs has, and indicate your interest through the Zoom chat function. For those meeting on the phone, press *9 on your phone to indicate your interest in providing public comment. It'll be for 3 minutes. So, Babs, welcome in. I welcome your public comment.
Hi, can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so as some of you know, I've been a regular at this meeting for quite a while now. And my public comment at this point is just wanting to applaud all of you for all the amazing accomplishments over the last 2, 3+ years. And also to note that I am cautiously optimistic moving forward with this new city council, new mayor. And I will continue to follow all of you and do my part in whatever way I can. And I know you didn't ask the public to identify one word, but I will say, at age 76 now, lifelong Portlander, my one word is hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Babs. So appreciate that. Anyone else who would like to provide public comment? Seeing no one else, then I would like us to move forward to the next slide, please. And this is an action item. And it is accepting the minutes from November 21st, December 10th, and December 11th. Are there any questions, comments, additions, or edits to the minutes? Yes, D'Angelo.
Thank you. I have no edits to the minutes other than, as I was going through the committee member list, I would just like the minutes to moving forward reflect the organization which I represent as opposed to the previous organization that I represented. And that would be for the November and both December minutes.
Okay, very good. With those edits, are there any other edits? May I have a motion for accepting the minutes from November 21st, December 10th, December 11th with those edits? May I have a motion? Yes, Faith?
Move to accept the minutes from November 21st, December 10th, and December 11th of 2004.
May I have a second?
2024.
Yeah, 24. I have a second.
I second.
Tracy, thank you so much. They're passed and accepted. Thank you. Next slide, please. We're going to move to the proposed code amendment to allow the use of PCEF interest for fiscal year 25-26 budget. And I would like to invite Mike Jordan to start us off, I believe.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Appreciate that. And thank you for the committee for giving us a little bit of time today. It's the first time I've been with the committee, and it's a real honor to be here. I first off, before I say anything else, want to thank you. Babs beat me to the punch. I want to thank you for all of your work in the last couple of years. It's been an extraordinary time and a huge lift. And I know you've spent many, many hours considering all of the new funding categories and getting that work done. And I know those big paychecks you get are worth all that work. And I really want to thank you. I know it's a volunteer work. I know it's a labor of love and interest, and just want you to know how much we all appreciate it. I also wanted to mention that, and Babs got me on this one too. She talked about the transition to a new form of government, and just want to say a couple words about how that's going. You know, we've spent an awful lot of energy in the last couple of years since the ballot measure for the charter change passed back in November of 2022. We've been working really hard preparing for a new mayor and a new council and a new form of government. And now we're here, and we're right in the thick of it. And for those that may be city council addicts, you will know that we had our first evening meeting last night. I got home at midnight. So the council is very active. And I think, to be fair, we're all finding our way in new relationships, in a new form of government with a legislative branch and an executive branch and a new council president, and all trying to figure out a little bit about how do we work together in this new form, make it effective for Portlanders, and I'm incredibly optimistic about this group of electeds. They are incredibly passionate people, certainly the most diverse in many ways, most diverse council we've ever had. And of course, because of the districts, the most representative council of the entire city of Portland that we've ever had. And, they're finding their way as a group of 12 to get to consensus on issues. And you all know, I'm sure, working together, that sometimes it's challenging to do that. But they're making progress, and I'm really excited about the work. And also last night, they formed subcommittees of the council, and established membership for those subcommittees. And they didn't just follow the structure of the city and the service areas. They went for policy areas, and know that climate and sustainability and equity are going to be a major thrust of their committee work. I wouldn't be surprised if the committee wants to interface with your group at some point. They're very interested in all the aspects of the city and your work in particular. If there are ever any questions, you can always look me up. I'm happy to talk more about the new way at the city anytime. And again, always available. Lastly, I'd like to say, and I had a chance to speak with the co-chairs just yesterday, actually, about this. I want to reiterate how grateful I am for the way the committee goes about its work and its investments and the recommendations to council about those investments. And it is a huge step in how the city is able to help meet some of its goals in its climate action plan, goals around equity. And I want to tell you how appreciative I am of that work, but I also want to say that I am well aware that the fund only can get us so far. We have tons of work to do on a policy basis, on a regulatory basis, on a service basis, on how we're going to fill the rest of the gaps and get the rest of the way on our climate action goals. And that's up to the city. And I also want you to know that I know this council, in speaking with them, even the short time I've been with them in the onboarding processes in December and now at their meetings in January, they're incredibly interested in meeting those goals, but doing so in a way where we are investing our funds and our interest in trying to put in both adaptive strategies and making progress on reducing our carbon footprint in ways that respect the disparate impact of climate across our city and the different communities in our city that are incredibly disparately impacted by the effects of climate change. And so, know that we know your work isn't the only work that needs to be done, that the city needs to be a continued partner with continued effort, and know that we are committed also to alleviating those disparate impacts. And so I'm going to stop there. I know that Jonas has some comments for you regarding the code amendment itself, and I think Donnie Oliveira is on the line too, and he may have some comments also. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you so much, Mike. Jonas, welcome in.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Moses. Thank you, committee, for the time to be with you. Just listening to Mike, I'm realizing we may need to get a different alignment in these conversations. It seems like Mike gets all the positive talking points, and then I get the negative talking points. So, Mike, let's work on that for the next time. So Jonas Beery, he, him pronouns. I'm the city's Deputy City Administrator of Budget and Finance, which is also the city's Chief Financial Officer position. What I was asked to do is kind of talk a little bit about just the big picture of the city's financial condition at this moment. I think you heard from my predecessor last year with a similar update. And I'll just preview it by saying it's not great. You've probably seen some of the information that's been in the media over the past few months. We've to the extent we've been able to, seen this coming to some degree and been trying to get that message out. What is kind of most relevant to this conversation is the general fund. So obviously lots of different funding sources at the city. General fund is sort of among the most challenged. Revenues projected for this coming fiscal year are barely increasing. So historically, we've seen been able to rely on property tax increases of 3 to 4%, maybe even more in really great years. Property taxes represent the largest source of funding for the general fund. This year, we're looking at growth at less than 1%, largely due to declining values in major high-value properties, predominantly in the central city. So those revenues that we might have been historically sort of anticipating 3 or 4% growth are only growing at 1%. So that's kind of the key revenue decline or much lower growth than would be typical. The other side of that equation is that costs are increasing significantly, largely due to inflation, which we've seen in obviously lots of other industries in our daily lives. Technology, materials, insurance costs, the costs of kind of running a large organization. Healthcare in particular has seen very large increases, as of course we've seen elsewhere. Those costs are increasing at a much higher rate than historically and than we had projected. So those two realities are leading to a pretty significant gap. In December, which is when we traditionally do kind of a formal general fund forecast update, that's December is aligned with November is when the property tax payments are made and data starts to come in. That's a point when we do the update. That forecast from the city budget office identified a $27 million gap for kind of the ongoing, well, it's 21 million ongoing and about 6 million of one-time kind of structural gap. So that imbalance between revenues and expenditures. And on top of that, we know there's around 40 million of kind of one-time expenditures that are actually expected to be ongoing. So really, kind of a 60 to 70 million dollar gap in the general fund. On top of that, we also know there's some other costs that are going to be developing, not known currently, not in the current budget, but it's obviously known there's things like labor negotiations, other priorities around accelerated sheltering, probably some healthcare costs even above what we're projecting. So there's going to be some additional costs we know are going to develop over spring as we continue budget development. The last thing I'll say is that's the general fund. There's obviously other funding. We also know that Parks has an expiring operating levy. PBOT has a unique funding challenge due to declines in their predominant revenue streams, and permitting and development are having a unique challenge due to reduced permit activity. So lots of unique challenges that we're facing at this moment. That all means that even without the support under consideration, or even with the support that's under consideration tonight, there will likely be some significant budget adjustments and budget reductions, translate to reductions to some city services and possibly city staffing. Last thing I'll say, certainly recognizing that as the work of this committee and the PCEF infrastructure is up and developing, and PCEF funds are starting to be expended and on track. Recognize that interest is not something that is going to be available. That's not something we are aiming to contribute towards ongoing expenditures. Recognizing that will assumedly become a declining revenue stream, A, and B, become back available to the system. So like last year, and would anticipate that if the committee so agrees, that this would be a one-time allocation contribution to help bridge that gap in fiscal 25-26. And Donnie, I think, are you presenting the details here?
Yes, thank you, Jonas. Good evening, everyone. Donnie Oliveira, you see him pronouns. I apologize for being late. So in front of you now is the proposed code amendment that would be going to City Council later this spring. As you can see, it is the exact language from last year, with of course the change being the fiscal year expenditure being 25-26 and the interest being drawn from the 23-24. Last year's contribution was closer to 7 million, and that was based on the fund balance at that time. But given the size of the fund balance in 23-24, that amount is closer to 18 million. And that just reflects how much revenue that the surcharge has collected that sits in our coffers. As Jonas mentioned, this continues to be a one-time endeavor. It's not our interest to make this ongoing. And in fact, as the program continues to spin more quickly and that fund balance goes down, to Jonas's point, it would be a non-reliable source in a good way. And so this is just another stopgap. And it's been said before, you all know this, we've said this on many occasions, but it's not the intent of the city leadership to rely on PCEF to bail us out. And at the same time, it continues to be a beacon of hope and another signal that the community's leadership many years ago when getting this ballot done was so important and innovative. And it's a wonderful resource for our communities because the things that we're backfilling now, and that's the word I'll use, are essential services now. And so before you is this language that we would include in an ordinance, again, sometime down the way once council's operations are locked in, and would be included in our budget for 25-26. And I will stop there. And Sam or Dr. Moses, if there's questions I can't see, I'm happy to take them if there are any. But otherwise, that was the extent of what we wanted to share. And thank you, Mike and Jonas, for joining tonight.
Thank you so much, Donnie. Yes, I would love to entertain questions. I'll be glad to call on people if you raise your hand if anyone has questions about this. Or comments. Yes, Sam.
And just as a reminder, as the code amendment that you all and the council ultimately adopted last year, anytime code amendments come before they go before city council, they have to be presented before this body, the PCEF committee. So that's what's happening here. This potential code amendment that would be placed on the agenda, potentially placed on the agenda, as Director Oliveira stated, or as DC Oliveira stated, it's coming before you all, but you're not required to take action. It's your discretion whether you take action. But in terms of the action, it is to ensure that the city comes before you all and presents it before you all in a public meeting.
Thank you so much, D'Angelo.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me. And I will keep my comments as brief and as succinct as possible. But City Administrator Jordan, DCA Beery, DC Oliveira, I appreciate the three of you coming to the committee to present this. What I especially appreciate is in your presentation, you addressed a very serious concern of mine, is that whether this would be an ongoing one-time usage of these funds. And so to be upfront and to say that this is not something that you count on as a reliable source, and to also point out that this is something that as the program continues to build and operate or activate programs, that recognizing that and not wanting to pull from that, that's very meaningful for me. So I appreciate the three of you being very upfront about that. I want to make sure that we as a committee are being good stewards of the fund. And as somebody that I love this city, I love its people, and I love what the fund can do. If this is something that we can contribute, I don't necessarily have any pushback. This is like I said, this is the second one-time only usage of these funds. So I just want to be clear that this is not something that the committee will be faced with having to make this decision or to go through this proposal again, and that we will be able to allocate these funds properly once these programs go forward. What I would like to see, and I don't know if it's possible, is I would like to see where these funds are being diverted to in the city specifically. I think that would be good for transparency for committee members and for community members to see that if PCEF does approve this or that we don't have any pushback, that we can at least say that PCEF contributed these interest funds to these city programs, to these initiatives that have caused these or that have continued to fund whatever these things may be. And my other comment that I think of is when I think of the city pulling from this interest fund, it then raises the question of if there are other interest funds that the city is pulling from and how those funds are being allocated. Now, I don't know if that's something that I can ask because I'm not a committee member on those places if that is happening, but I would like to know if there are other places that the city is pulling funds from in order to cover its deficits. And that's where I'll stop.
Thank you so much. Ranfees, is that correct? Have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yes, you got it. You got it well, Dr. Moses. And I don't know if Mike or Jonas, if you wanted to respond to D'Angelo's question, I'm happy to chime in now. But what do you prefer?
Yeah, I'll respond quickly, and thank you, D'Angelo, for your feedback and your question. So really, there aren't any other kind of isolated funds in this way that would sort of generate interest that could be identified for specific purposes. So most of the funds that the city is engaged with are sort of pooled in that investment, and then the interest returns are dispersed back, on sort of a allocated basis back to the programs that generate those fund balances.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for responding to D'Angelo's question there. One, again, appreciate the presentation and having you, Mike, and Jonas, as well as Donnie here on this call. I think just want to note, just the context settings for folks. Like, this is not a fun time to be, at the city in terms of dealing with budget issues. This is a problem that's a challenge being faced, the county level, schools, other cities as well. So this is not a unique problem to the city of Portland, but a problem and a challenge for this new council and mayor to tackle. I think with that, said, the city plays an important role in how we address climate change. So, a crumbling city agency impacts our work one way, shape, or form. We need a healthy and robust BPS. We need a healthy and robust permitting department. We need programs working in all cylinders. But I think D'Angelo just, I think highlighted, the challenge as well as being part of the committee members and being good stewards and, asking the tough questions and trying to be good stewards of this fund. I do want to remind, committee members how we try to navigate this last biennium or the last budget cycle. We had similar proposal before us, such as this. We took that as an opportunity to build trust and build relationship with city council and mayor, and proposing, some additional potential amendments or codes alongside the code amendment with this language. So just want to remind, again, this committee, how we navigated it previously. While meeting the needs of the city. So as we think about the language before us, just do want to know we always have that option to also propose in parallel code proposals to council. So I don't have particular ideas, but just want to sort of remind the committee on that. And again, I think it's imperative we find a way to work build a relationship with the new council, the new mayor, and find a resolution where we can. So with that said, I think that's a commitment I personally made. But again, as a committee, I think we should work and navigate this together.
Thank you so much. Yes, Meg. Come in.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Moses. And thank you to folks joining tonight. I hope welcome to the new term, and I hope we have a good working relationship. And Donnie, good to see you again. And yeah, I also appreciate my committee members asking questions. And I'm kind of going to piggyback off of something Ranfis mentioned here. But first, I just did have two clarification questions. And one is, can someone just repeat the amount of our interest thought and the projected budget gap for the city? So just like 2 data points. And then the second one is, I know it's coming to us for consideration, but what is the timeline for the city vote on it? I'm trying to understand, if we were to decide something, what's our timeline? So those are kind of 2 data points. And I do have other comments, but maybe I'll pause because those might inform my comments.
I'll take the amount of interest as 18.8 million, and it's it's a specific number, but let's just say 18.8 million. And the time it goes to council will be a little bit further in the spring, and that's TBD, largely because council only created their committees last night at 11:13 p.m. I was there with Mike, and they still have some process. So we're gonna give them time to work out their thing before doing something like this. But it would be in the spring, and obviously we'd give this group warning. But then also, just as a reminder, even though it's allocated or it's approved in code, the amount would still have to go through a budget process, through our normal budgeting process, to be actually appropriated and allocated. And then I'll allow Jonas or Mike to respond to the gap. So 18.8 is the interest for 23-24.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie, for that. And yeah, so the general fund gap currently is around, I mean, it sounds awkward to use round numbers in this context, but around 60 to 70 million, which includes both ongoing, about 21 million of ongoing gap, and around 45-ish million of one-time gap. On top of that, there's some unknown costs that we expect will come into play here in spring. So net result is the total will probably be somewhere approaching 100 million total gap.
Thanks for the answers. And that sounds painful as a Portland resident to hear. So I hear that. And I appreciate also the comment on the timing, because that just helps. I also appreciate coming to us when it's not like a urgent, I mean, it's timely situation, but not an urgent in terms of the committee having to decide anything exactly at this exact second, it sounds like. So, and I appreciate that just in general. Donnie knows that's a kind of a request we've had, is to give us a little time to sit and chew on things and get all the information. So it seems like we could deliberate over the course of this meeting and next if we were to weigh in. And I do understand, as the context is pointed out, that other people have said that our committee doesn't actually vote on things outside of the climate investment plan, and the interest isn't. So this is our choice as a committee if we want to lend support to this effort or not. And in general, like D'Angelo, I understand the budget crisis, and I understand that since this money is not being used currently for PCEF, that I'm in general supportive of it. For following up on Ranfis's point, though, and what I understand is that then there will be an opportunity for the new city council to look at the PCEF code. And I'm looking ahead to the next agenda on our meeting tonight, and been thinking about this a lot with PCEF staff. And I know one direction that I would like us to head as a committee is to having an annual calendar where we can plan long-term in advance about revisiting the climate investment plan. So something I'm chewing on, and I would love to hear other committee members, and maybe in February we can have really specific language to vote on, possibly, is thinking about when city council opens the code to amend, to consider this interest, something like a sentence around that the CIP shall be amended on an annual basis according to a calendar and with public notice. I don't think that's the perfect language, but something with that idea I would like to get to a spot where when we do have surplus money, it's not kind of random, the proposals that come to us, but it's on a calendar. So that's something I'm chewing on. So yeah, I will stop. I'd love to, I see Donnie's hand and I would love to hear committee members if you have kind of reactions to that.
Thank you, Meg. Donnie?
Thank you for the recognition. So first I want to acknowledge Ramfis and Megan for their leadership last year and getting that code that brought us here today in this way. Sincerely, it was a smart move and appreciated. And I can't stress enough how much I agree with having a standard cadence for how the CIP is contemplated for changes or amendments as necessary. And I think, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues in the room with me at the administrator's office, but I think we'd welcome some sort of stability and predictability when it comes to how we navigate some of our bigger programs like PCEF. So I think that we're in alignment with that sort of thinking and codifying it, even if it's an admin rule, however we want to do it. We can work with Sam and team on that. I think would be welcome. So we have some predictability on these things and maybe even play a little bit of strategy and defense. So it goes. But thank you.
Thank you so much. D'Angelo?
Yeah, actually, I meant to put my hand back down because Donnie I agreed with what he said and what Meg said, but I just want to lend my support to both of their statements. But I do believe firmly that, like Donnie said, a cadence for us so we can not only be prepared on our end, but that we can inform community members. And so they know, hey, around this time of year, this is when this may happen. So let's actually, just so community members can also be aware of when the city may intend to deal with PCEF or when we intend to make some sort of code amendment. So I agree.
Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? Meg, I just want to touch base with you. We're going to go ahead and move forward to the next agenda item.
Yeah, I think just to make it clear to committee members, D'Angelo sounded supportive, and other ones I think would, and it sounds like that would be supported by staff too. So I think I'll try to work with staff and circulate some language or draft up some more specific language and run it, and share it with committee members, and maybe we can deliberate that in more detail in February to time it for that city vote on the interest.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership. That's wonderful. Jonas, hey, Mike, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Dr. Moses, for facilitating and appreciate your work. So thank you, guys. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Right. We're going to go on to the annual CIP update process and timeline as we continue to move forward in our agenda. So, next slide, please. Sam, I believe you are up.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Moses. So I appreciate everyone teeing up to and Meg, you teeing this up. This has been, as you all know, it's been a bit of a wild ride for the past many years, but certainly as we came to the conclusion of a climate investment plan at the end of 2023, I don't know that we knew that we would be revisiting it so soon last year. And at the same end, we've been busy implementing several programs. And as we do that, as you all know, we learn things. Despite our best efforts, we learn what's working well, what's not working well, where some elements that we might have had in the climate investment plan may need to be tweaked, adjusted, where some of the goal measures aren't quite right. And so a big part of what we want to get into a regular cycle, and then we receive things. Things come our way and we've had to respond. And that's put us all in many, you all certainly in awkward situations. We've worked pretty busily in many instances and unexpected times and moments. And so what we want to really talk to and start to lay the groundwork for here is what an annual update process could look like. And this really is, I really want to encourage folks to see, we've got things here for you all to respond to, but this is the first of the conversation, very much a draft conversation. It's a conversation we're starting with you all. And then ultimately we will need to take back to our staff, our our data systems performance manager, our engagement staff, and others to ground what it'll look like to implement this on an annual basis and realize this. And so I think I really just encourage you all. We have some discussion questions at the end of this to take this in and start to think about what it could look like. And as you all know, we've already started teeing up that I think as much as we hope to get into an every other month meeting calendar, I think it's really, we're going to end up working in chunks of time. So there's enough there, but what I wanted to just acknowledge is that this has been a long time coming. We felt the need for it. You all have talked about it. We as staff have wanted to have something like this. Deputy City Administrator Oliveira just talked about this. And so consider this the first of this conversation. We're hoping that we can continue workshopping what an annual timeline could look like in our February meeting, ultimately in our March meeting, and getting to settling on what a year one process could look like, something we could learn in year one, acknowledging that it's going to look different the next year and so forth. Okay. So one, when we talk about annual update process and timeline, here are just some draft objectives we put together. One, we want to be able to incorporate lessons learned, including stakeholder input, to ensure that our plans remain relevant and responsive. We've got a lot of input as we implement our programs, and sometimes as we write them out, as we design them, despite our best intentions, there are adjustments that are needed. We want to be able to update the plan to incorporate improved metrics, outcomes, data collection methodologies to enhance our ability to track and measure progress. So again, as we implement our programs, we realize that, you know what, we want to implement it in this way and that way, and we want to be able to come back, have that public conversation all around how we make some of those adjustments. We also just want to review our performance, our programs, how we're utilizing and expending resources, the fund projections overall, and ensuring that we're essentially allocating efficiently our resources so that we can maximize our climate and community benefits. And then lastly, we want to be able to have the opportunity to adapt our funding priorities to address timely community needs and opportunities as they arise, and creating really a container to be able to take those opportunities in. Now, next slide, I'm going to really break down sort of what we see as a cycle to what we think this could look like on an annual basis. So as we think about a process, we think it really be about in the range of 3 to 5 months. So it'd be a substantive part. And as a reminder, maybe for the committee, I should have taken a step back. Climate investment plan is the document you all adopt every 5 years, redo every 5 years. You also, as you make amendments to it, but a big part of that document, it is our accountability to the community, to our council, to others around what we're going to do. And so being able to make those adjustments to that and track our progress and respond to that is a core part of your obligations, saying how well are we doing to the obligations we've committed to there. And so this 3 to 5 month timeline is what we're anticipating this could take, with the aim of ideally completing it by October, such that we're able to get recommendations likely through a subcommittee of council and ultimately to a full city council in December or so of each year, such that it really, anything that we're adjusting is teed up for any of the budget processes that our public partners have to go through. That we get to, that initially in this near term, we're focusing on programs in implementation stage. As you all know, we've got now over 40 strategic programs and then some. And so we want to, at least in the near term, start just so we can start bite-sized, focusing on those strategic programs that are in that implementation stage. And then I think just acknowledging that we're talking 3 to 5 months, this body meeting once a month in public meetings. So really as a public group, you'd be meeting anywhere from 3 to 5 times in that span of time, that a substantive body of the work would happen in subcommittees, a subcommittee or more. Some draft process objectives, things we want you all to think about. So this is all what we're placing for you all to think about, is that number one, a process objective is that there's transparency, that there's clear processes and consistent processes for stakeholders. So everyone knows each year in this time window is when we're going to be revisiting our various programs, so that if there are adjustments, that's when we know we need to be making them. That they're equity centered, that we prioritize, continue to prioritize meaningful engagement of our PCEF priority populations, that center to that is our equity metrics to inform that decision making, that it is data driven, that we're pulling in the range of other metrics to inform how we're thinking about any updates, and that ultimately that the mechanism, the process has mechanisms so that we're able to adapt to emerging climate or community needs or funding opportunities that arise. In the next about 4 slides, I'm really going to walk through this little diagram we've got here to talk about sort of what we envision the cycle being. Where we're starting with a review of existing program performance, incorporating lessons learned and some community feedback, reviewing the funding and understanding the funding balances, and then ultimately getting to making recommendations from you all around the path forward. So the first part of the phase we'd envision would be in this, what you could consider month 1, where we're reviewing existing program performance. So here we'd be reviewing program performance metrics, such as greenhouse gas reductions out of a program or some of the community benefit outcomes. We'd be discussing how programs and assessing how programs are exceeding, meeting, or in some instances falling short of expectations, and trying to understand some of the challenges or successes associated with that, what changes we might want to make. In that, we would be able to share feedback from implementing partners, and as part of that, starting the conversation on do we want to maybe increase some of the existing programs, or do we want to dial back some existing programs? But really that the start is just our existing programs as the initial conversation, and really starting with the metrics and outcomes in the data there. And then moving really into sort of that next phase would be where we're incorporating more not only anecdotal, but really some more of that qualitative information. Some of those lessons learned that we're able to elevate from our staff, from our implementing partners, from the community feedback that we solicit as we engage in our programs. And that may come through surveys, some of our other advisory bodies, work groups, and public meetings. And so that would just be an opportunity to really just provide a little bit of flavor to that data and information you're seeing around, okay, here's sort of some of and it just builds on that. And so there's a clear relationship between that prior phase. Really, the next phase is reviewing the fund balance, checking in on our forecasted revenues, our forecasted spending, and so we'd be able to discuss the fund balance, understand whether there are any additional available resources for upcoming years, share the revenue forecast, confirm how that forecast and the fund balance are aligned with our planned expenditures, and identify opportunities for updates to the program. So just understanding the scale of resources and how that might align. And what I mean there is, do we have enough resources at play because something isn't working as well? We might sunset it. There are other things out there that we're like, between the constellation of things here, we might have enough resources for another Collaborating for Climate Action funding opportunity. Or we're really talking about minor updates in a given cycle. And then really getting to this last phase is that phase is where you recommend a path forward. So after that sequence of phases and information and evaluation, assessments, and discussions, really deciding on a path forward, whether that's going to be making minor updates, tweaks to programs, slight additions of funding to some funding areas here, whether you all would be calling in and elevating and developing, call in to elevate and develop proposed concepts. So, understanding, and I think a good example I've described here is coming out of the heat waves several years ago. Could have been, there's this big pressing community need. We are hearing it loud and clear. We want to develop a program concept that's focused on responding to that. Or there's a major affordable housing effort coming down the pipeline, and we want to figure out how PCEF can weave into that. So really being able to take in what is coming through at the moment and giving us the opportunity to potentially take some time. And in that framework, it would probably be a 4 to 6 month time frame after that to build that out. And then last would be soliciting full proposals. So knowing there's enough resources and running something more like a Collaborating for Climate Action again, and that tees up really that making that recommendation to create that programming, and then we go forth and we solicit those full proposals over the coming 8 to 10 months. And so that's really the sort of overall arc that we'd envision, and really want to put this out there for you all today, just to start thinking about what each of these steps, how that could fit in, acknowledging what can happen in public meeting versus subcommittees. And so that's really here. I think the next slide, I believe, is just some of the discussion questions. I know I'm seeing where we are, but I want to make sure you all have a chance to see these. Back to you, Dr. Moses.
Thank you so much. I think this would be a wonderful place to take a 10-minute break. So let's come back at 8 minutes after, and we'll pick it up from here on this slide. So feel free to turn off your camera, come back in 10, please. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you, thank you. So we have discussion questions here. I would love to give everyone an opportunity to make sure they jump in, that we hear your voices this evening. So, let's just start with the first question. How can we ensure the process aligns with both short-term adaptability and long-term climate and equity goals? Any thoughts or considerations around this question? The balancing act, right? Between long-term and short-term. How can the plan help you do that? Meg, you were talking, okay, Robin, but I'll come back to you, Meg.
So I'm not going to answer these
Okay.
questions, at least right now. I've had two more context questions.
Okay.
As I was kind of thinking about what Sam mentioned. First one is just the nature of the changes. We're opening up the hood, so to say. Are these updates more incremental kind of in nature, or are we like going to replace the engine and do a very thorough process, or maybe not a process? It's just what's the scope of changes, right? That's the first question. And the second question is, there's a part, I think, I forget which phase 3 or 4, right? Right. We might entertain new ideas or new ways, given, how are those introduced, right? Or is that ideas that we come up with, staff comes up with? This past round or past year or two, we had tons of pitches from city bureaus on how to spend the money. I hope that's not the case here. I welcome their input, but I would like to have a more balanced approach to how we might accommodate changes. So how are new ideas introduced? And maybe that's not something that we can answer now. Maybe that's, we'll answer in the course of figuring all this out. But those are kind of my two more bigger picture questions before I think I can start thinking about some of these other questions.
Thank you so much, Robin. I really appreciate you requesting more context. Sam, would you be the person that could provide that?
I can start too, and I think Robin kind of alluded to a little bit of part of it is figuring this. That part of some of it is figuring it out in this process. I think that, I liked your collar analogy. I think you're replacing, the air filter, getting a little bit more flow through there so that you can move a little bit faster in some instances. In some instances, you might actually be adding on that camper thing at the top of the car so you can do a lot, you can do more. I think figuring out that scale is part of what I see in this cycle of this process where you're starting always with your existing programs. What are the adjustments? But by the time you get to this reviewing the fund forecast, understanding the nature of the balances, it may be that in 1 year you say, you know what, given some big developments in this city that have really big climate potential that we've heard about, we've been tracking for a little while, we may want to actually cater another collaborating for climate action funding opportunity. So let's pause this year, keep this year to minor updates. That's our recommendation. And next year, let's tee up, a climate act, a larger scale funding opportunity. So I think part of going through this is it should kind of elevate and highlight what is the scale of opportunity and the adjustments you can make to that car, whatever else. And obviously that then sets something else in motion. But I think it's trying to use this process to do that. And so I think I expect to figure this out, but I want to acknowledge that, your point around hearing from city bureaus, I think we're going to need to figure out what does that look like? And at the same end, I think that's what kind of that question here at the end, this, how do we align whatever it is that we do with like just the reality of the what we can manage in that time frame with the staff capacity we have now, and then what it'll grow to be in the future.
Does that
Thank
feel
you.
good, Robin?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you. Faith, welcome in.
Thanks so much, Dr. Moses. And I have to apologize. I'm going to be like Robin and not address directly your questions.
Right. Not a problem.
I think that the proposal is needed, is elegant. I like the presentation of it. Thank you so much. I think it's needed for a whole bunch of reasons. And one is to both offer opportunity for continued engagement with community on what's going on PCEF. It's also a container to be publicly sharing information in a real directive way on what's going on, what's working, what's not working, what's adjusting. I think there's certainly times when we may not have anything that we're ready to change, but still the process to build in, right? This is just design process 101, have time to review and incorporate your learnings. So I love that. I also think it potentially puts a container around those requests, Robin, that are coming to us, right, from the city, because there's a one time that they can come and there's a form in which they can come. So that's helpful. Very, hopefully, quite helpful. So I really like that. The thing that was coming up for me as you were presenting this great plan was capacity. Just as it is every single time anyone designs anything and wants to learn from what they're learning, from what they're doing. So my sense is that current staff is running faster than their legs can carry them. And this will obviously also be added to the plates of people who are running programs, because that's who can do the evaluation, right? So how are we going to do it? And actually adding us to the mix adds more work, right, for staff. So, you know, how are you going to manage that?
Right, that's fun.
Sam?
I think that's the right question. And in my mind, it's, you know, we've been turning on program after program, turning a bunch of spigots in many places, and now we are staffing up, but we're still catching up to work we've committed to a year ago, and then some. And so I think that is a big part of it. And I think part of what we want to do is start this conversation. And I had my staff reviewed some of this earlier, and they were like, "Ooh, this how do we signal this is really, really draft?" And what it looks like in year one is inherently not going to be what it looks like in year 2, 3, 4 as we continue to grow. And that's why I think that focusing on, when we talk about the programs that are being implemented, we can really figure out how do we highlight those, knowing that there's probably a few programs that at some point in the future that are going to be the ones that are going to be more challenging. We're going to discuss with y'all programs that are going really well that we want to elevate because we want to bring more resources. And then there's a bunch that we're going to say, you know what, these we're going to, you know, we're not going to be coming to, we're not going to be bringing them to you because we only have this much that we can feasibly bring in the time and space. And yet that container is what we're trying to get to, because without it, it just comes to us. It just comes at us nonstop. And it starts to get us into that place. And so I think it's going to have to be us being really tempered about what we can do in year one, hearing from you all here what is most important for you all, and getting that priority so that we can take that back with the team and say, yeah, what can we achieve with who we have on board now?
I wanted to make one more comment if I can, and thank you, Sam, for addressing that. The comment is one benefit that I didn't see listed out is also the precedent and the value this will have in the next CIP. Having a regular process may not limit the amount of time that we spend on the CIP in the next round, but it'll hopefully increase the engagement and make it more effective. So thank you for that too.
Thank you, Faith. Hi, D'Angelo.
Hi. So, I'm still formulating my thoughts around this first question, and it seems like my other committee members were just kind of moving around. But when I think about the proposing changes to the CIP, I think a lot about the community feedback that I've gotten from folks that have been participants of PCEF. One thing that and maybe this is a self-ordained title, but I tend to find myself in a lot of spaces where people will tell me about their trials and tribulations and working with PCEF, their wins, their losses, everything in between. But what's important to me is how we are capturing a lot of those comments and how we're incorporating that feedback into how we deliver these programs through the CIP. One thing that I love hearing from is people that are either currently involved with PCEF programming, people that may have not won PCEF programming, and their thoughts about, the feedback they got about why they didn't win, or their experiences as they've worked through the program. I think these are things that are very critical, that as we incorporate those lessons with community, that we can make a more a more, I won't say amenable, because I don't know if that's the right word I want to use, but we'll have say a CIP that is more easily accessible for community members. And maybe that's not the right phrasing either. So I think I'll stop there because I want to continue to formulate my thoughts. But in essence, I hope that we are able to capture the feedback from people that have been involved with the CIP and use that to, again, make these minor changes and develop this program further.
Thank you so much. Renfie, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, I was put my hand down. I do have thoughts, but I was gonna wait to see if other committee members had additional thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, can I pick on you for a second? What are you thinking?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was really pleased seeing this presented, so thank you so much, Sam. I like D'Angelo and Faith. I really like the area of getting the community feedback and hopefully have a lot more of the community, the benefits that community is seeing from our programs. I really would like to hear more about that and how we can further design offers that really are centering communities' needs in line with, climate action. And, I think that's probably the direction that my thinking is going, is how is the community benefiting from the work that we're doing, how we're incorporating how they perceive the impact, the positive impact that they're receiving from these programs, and how we're incorporating those into future designs. So that's it. Thank you for calling on me, Dr. Moses.
You're welcome, Tracy. Thank you. Alicia, what are your thoughts?
I echo a lot of the comments that the other committee members have made. I think it's very responsive to some of the feedback and really some of the frustration that we've heard from the community. And I think this is a step in the right direction.
Beautiful. Thank you. Meg.
Yeah, I love hearing other committee members.
Mm-hmm.
I've been advocating for something like this, so glad to see it. I do have some questions. I'm not sure if they're like exactly relating to these bullet points, but Sam, are you imagining that the reflection is at the same time for both the community responsive grant funding cycles and the Bureau and maybe you said this, but it's not clear in the slides, and that just feels like it's like really different funding. And so the like lessons learned, how we collect the data and what changes we might make would look really different. So I just wonder if you thought that through and it makes sense to do that all at once, or if it's like this year we're going to focus on this or this, I don't know. Yeah.
We're going to have to come back together and kind of break that down a little bit. And I think we're going to need to be strategic about what we pick in year one for the reasons that Faith had stated earlier around just where do we have good information where we can both chew on the illustrative, where we've got good feedback, where we've got good opportunities to make adjustments. And so there's going to be that. I think there's always going to be I think our community grant cycles are always going to have their cycles, their opportunities for feedback. We will share those with you. a lot of that is really making sure we're continuing to right size the funding for those cycles. Whereas where we have more, I would just say, control of the processes, as you all know, in the climate investment plan, are the strategic programs where we've designed them with more, where we're more directive in those efforts. And I think so. I think a lot more of the focus will be on the strategic programs in the first year. We're going to pick a few where we're like, there's something to grab onto. The city bureau projects probably not going to be at the right place, although a lot of what we will do there is really focus on, do we have the right metrics that are meaningful so that we can continue the conversation of how do we continue improving that work so you get good information. So we're going to need to sit down and say, where are there a few places we can focus that allows us to dig our teeth in, allows us to kind of test out this process of doing this, knowing that we're not going to touch everything. We're not going to be able to touch all the programs and be able to evaluate all of them. That just isn't feasible, but starting to get a little bit of our legs under us around doing this in a way that again maintains that container for folks that are going to come in and need those adjustments. And so that's I think so. I think being intentional about what we commit to in this process in a way that doesn't add necessarily like this overwhelming extra strain, but is responsive to the needs you all have asked for around just having clarity when these things happen, these efforts come through, and elevating clear places. We've heard community feedback, staff feedback, partnering feedback on where key changes need to be made.
Are you good, Meg?
Yeah, I would love to hear D'Angelo.
Okay, great. Go right ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. One thing that I think about is I think it's very important for the community, the committee and PCEF to measure realistic standards and expectations for what can be achieved through the CIP versus what people are potentially expecting. I hear a lot of, when I hear people talk to me about the CIP, there's a lot of expectations that I know that cannot be fulfilled through the work that we do in PCEF. And so it's just for us, I think we have to do a good job. PCEF has to do a good job or continue doing a good job of measuring what is realistic, what can be achieved, what can we do versus what we can't do. So people don't come in and assume because, oh, the CIP is 150 a year for 5 years, that there's just this huge tranche of money sitting around that's not getting spent because we're not doing anything, right? And we have all of these things that we could fund. And I think that's also very important for us to measure those expectations if we were to have, community feedback sessions. I think it's very clear. I think it's a very imperative that we are clear about what can we do with this and what cannot be done, and how, for the things that can't be done, how can we work with, some of those achievable goals in whatever that may be. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Robin.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the second bullet point here. I think what's really important for me is in terms of this balance for meaningful community input is really giving community ample notice that the window is open for this input. It could be something like every Ides of March, or whatever date we pick. People know that we will be soliciting input and feedback on adapting or modifying the CIP. So it gives time to people to think, maybe form, collaborations, whatever's necessary to prepare. Because I think what's happened in the past year and a half is that, some economist in the city comes up, says, oh, we have extra money. And before the world knows about it, all the agency folks say, oh, okay, we got an idea for it, right? And they get this kind of head start. And they're already pushing us for a decision before the rest of the world knows that this is available. So I think it's important to have a timeline that is repeatable every year, and setting expectations so people can plan. And I think in terms of getting the input, I want to acknowledge the staff constraints. Right, we're all very busy. And each year may look a little different depending on the staffing situations, depending on what else is going on. So how that will look, I think there has to be a little flexibility in that. So I lost my train of thought, but that was the key point that I wanted to make, is just having a timeline and giving ample opportunity for people to come up with ideas and offer their feedback.
Thank you so much, Robin. Appreciate that. Renfees?
Yeah, thanks. Great discussion, so far. I think I'm just take a step back and then try to answer some of these bullet points. But I guess the way I'm, trying to think about sort of long-term, equity goals is maybe just adding another question to this, which is what would this work look like if we were all not here and replaced? So are long-term goals and equity goals clear? If someone were to replace ourselves in the committee or staff, like would those plans and goals be pretty clear moving forward and subsequently every 5 years? So, I think to me, like I think we need to have a pretty clear North Star in terms of what are all our leading goal here for this program. Like what is our promise or our commitment to Portland when it comes to the Portland Clean Energy Fund? Because not just about the work around climate, it's not just around equity or workforce. I think it's a combination of all those things. But I think the more that we can set the time to provide that clarity for this 5-year plan, the subsequent 5-year plan, like I think that creates the opportunity for those short-term adaptabilities. So as we create those plans, those commitments for 5 years, and we're saying, why are we adapting? Why are we changing things? It would be clear based on our goal why we would be adapting in the short term. So sorry to speak in the abstract, but those are like things that come to mind for me when trying to answer these questions. I think climate change is still, I think, an important imperative. I think as we're learning more and more, the impacts, the acceleration of climate and heating impacts, or just overall accelerated impacts on climate, we're starting to learn more and more. And what we've experienced the last 20 years could look very different the next 20 years. So we should have some flexibility on adaptability, but again, important that we know what is our long-term or North Star goal for this program to allow for those adaptabilities. With that said, I think that will, I hope something like that could help us answer, like, do we have sufficient staff to do this work? So I think I would hope that we do. I hope the answer to all the things we would want to do is not work harder staff. I think it would be compromise of, needed staff as well as finding ways where we can work smarter. So I think when it comes to, meaningful community input, like I think there's got to be areas in the program that we revisit and revise us as a committee and our relationship to other various committees. And I would point to like the High Road Advisory Committee example, like what is our relationship? How do we evolve that relationship? Knowing that there are multiple disciplines in the different programs that we fund that we as a committee can't do it all, that those responsibilities, that kind of additional oversight and expertise has to be delegated. And I think it's not explicit in legislation, but I think it's implicit, like, parts of oversight could be potentially delegated. And I think with that, it comes with a commitment, like what is our social, contract with different communities, different experts, knowing that we have a program that requires us to have multiple lenses and multiple expertises. I'll go back, like, I think on just like things like community benefits and, the things that we aim to do, like, it seems like that requires a lot of work from staff and program managers to identify what are those benefits. And sometimes I think probably I could be wrong, Sammy could correct me, but probably the easiest benefits to articulate are where there are clear requirements, such as, the family wage requirement. But I think that, but I would kind of, challenge us as a committee, like where we could work smarter on a program like this is like, could be community benefits that could help save us time if we knew they were agreements, or where can we promote or require that there be collaborations and partnerships that could make these programs smarter. One of my biggest concerns as a program that makes it seem like we're working harder and not smarter is, workforce. Like, how do we deal with the challenge of, potentially 8 different programs or nonprofits or organizations asking to fund the same type of training for maybe say heat pumps or solar. You know, how do we flip that and encourage, how do we get those 8 partners to partner together to just do that one training program? How do we just further encourage, you know, that these partnerships, these programs, these trainings that we're funding become sustainable after PCEF funding evaporates? So those, I think, didn't mean to go a deep dive on that as an example, but again, areas that we could hopefully work smarter, not harder, ease, I think, the constraints for staff capacity. Again, that's just an example. Like, what are those other tangible community benefits that could be more articulated early and often, and you know, lessen the work for staff to ensure that they're there. But it's a good requirement. It's a thing that we put the onus on, whether it be a bureau or not or an applicant, to ensure that they're making those commitments early and often. And then again, yeah, I digress here, but I just want to say, like, I think I'm open to, again, this process, and I think it'll help us if we can know, again, what are those North Stars, if we set that time, maybe every calendar year, what that looks like. But I look forward to this process. So sorry for rambling for a good chunk of time there.
That's okay. I don't mind stepping in and you know, giving us parameters and bumpers. So that's my job, and I appreciate it, being able to do that. Megan, I'm going to go ahead to you, and then I'm going to ask a question afterwards. So Meg, go right ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting us all to talk. I'll comment on the last bullet to try to stick to your question, Sam. It seems to me that our full committee meetings, I think it's important to ask this question because they wouldn't be long enough nor maybe appropriate places to like get in the nitty-gritty of stuff. So I think, but I'm not quite sure what I mean, it sounds like there'll be some sort of subcommittee that's tracking this, but I think if we're learning, like the subcommittee would be the place to get into the weeds and maybe also into some like challenging things that we don't necessarily want to air in like a public venue. So I think at the full committee, it's more like major process changes, major reporting changes, major granting change, you know, like kind of staying at the higher level at the full committee. But that means that we would want robust committee, this committee membership participation in that subcommittee and like a presentation by those members so that the other committee members can feel knowledgeable enough and, you know, like to have enough information and insight into that to vote or suggest direction. So that's kind of the take I have.
Thank you so much. Robin?
Yeah, just real quick to piggyback off what Megan just brought up. I think one of the things that if we envision this process to be a little bit different every year, given the changing conditions, one of the things I would like the subcommittee to do is to kind of develop the framework for how we, you know, go through this process, you know, every year. You know, I mean, and from today's discussion, I think we'll have some general guidelines as to how we want to do this, but understand that we may have to adapt it year to year depending on, you know, just whatever's going on. And I think, you know, that's something that a subcommittee could do is work with staff and kind of say, okay, this year, this is what's up, and figure out a way to, you know, continue the process.
Thank you so much. Sam, I have a question. When would this start again? Like,
I think ideally we get to some general cohesion around you know, settling around a process in March. Gives us a little bit of what we would think is April, May to start, you know, we would want to give our staff at least a few months to start pulling together the content that's expected for that. And then probably in June, begin that conversation.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Any other questions? This has been a great conversation. Sounds like it's a very needed tool to be able to make the decisions, ensure that you're keeping your North Star in alignment and that everything follows that North Star, that you're always heading toward that. So this document, this process, especially being able to receive feedback from the community and doing assessments on how well your programs are going, those are fantastic steps to know that you're going in the right direction. Yes, Renfees.
Maybe there's a question for Sam, I guess. Sam, curious, I know we've had conversations in the past about on the board, in the board, on the work, in the work type of framework. What do you think, based on PCEF charter, like what do you believe is the baseline role for the committee on this, like on this particular question in this presentation?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that our climate goals are broad, complex, span many different funding areas. And for that reason, you all occupy many different areas and bring many different expertises. And that remains the original charge, was bringing this diverse group of folks with diverse expertise together to help set, originally, yes, it was the funding. Now it's that overall direction and balancing where is that overall need. So I think it comes back to the climate investment plan has become a more complex document. So at some point, sure, there may be a discussion of, is this at the right level? Is it still serving us the way that it's drafted at that level? But it is still validating and checking in and saying, are we implementing it along the lines of that plan? Is that plan still there? I mean, that broader kind of, the Robbins point of changing out the engine every 5 years, but that in the interim, it's, are we still running that plan? What adjustments do we need to make sure we're still running towards what we originally set out to do here in 23?
Okay, just not to be a stickler here, I'm just using on this analogy. So like baseline expectation, just using this analogy, like obviously we're not the mechanic, we're not the technician in the engine. You just want us to know that the engine was changed, or do you just want us to know that the engine is working? Sorry to use that as a terrible analogy, but if PCEF is the engine,
right, what tweaks do we need to make? So we'll do the diagnostics, right? So we'll get you the diagnostics, and then you'll help us decide which are the amongst all, what are the fixes that we're going to make to continue making sure this vehicle is running smoothly and forward towards its destination.
Okay, sorry. So this is maybe a useful analogy just for me, but all right. So you all come up with the diagnostics. You tell us, hey, here's the state of the car. You could do this. You could repair the belts. You may not need to repair the belts. You really do need to do the oil change. You're gonna need to change the brake pads. But you could get away with not changing these fluids. Sorry. Those are the decisions you expect us as a baseline of what you would expect from us in the community. I'm just asking for clarity. So
yeah, on an annual basis, yes. Generally, that's the gist. Obviously, there's going to be moments and times where, and obviously this past year was a big one. I hope we don't have the scale of what we've done over the past 12 months. That was a lot. And so that was more than what you just described there, Ramphis. But in the span of that 5 years, it is continually making sure that is this operating well and heading towards our direction here. And then at that 5-year point, checking in, and we do that broader reevaluation, that broader crosswalk with our next iteration of our climate action plan and so forth to see, okay, now we retool this and make sure, is this still the right vehicle to get us to that North Star, our 2030 goals and so forth.
I just want a quick comment. As the PCEF committee, we should probably be using an EV as a model as opposed to an ICE engine. So I bring that up because I'm the one that introduced this analogy.
Thank you, Robin.
An e-bike, we should get even,
Yeah, active transportation. Any other clarifying questions? Okay, so what do we think are the next steps here, Sam?
Yeah, so what
Or committee? Yeah.
So one, I think these questions still stand. They're in your court. So as you all have feedback, what we'd like to do is we will go back. We've taken some notes here. Our staff will chime in on this, and we'll come back, and as we come back to you all in your February meeting, we'll bring this back up and we'll kind of iterate on it. Ideally, figure out what's the next set of questions we might want you to focus on, so we can help design what does that look like. And as part of that, we'll check in as the team and see whether that we might start to elevate. These are sort of the kind of questions we'd ask about, any evaluations. These are the kind of programs we'd start to look at first, but we'll think through what gets us a little further along in defining what this process looks like and putting that, because I can appreciate here, for your sake, for our sake, public's sake, just trying to ground what that is in reality, what year one could look like, so we can manage expectations around that as well. So we expect to come back February, and then again in March, where we're hoping to get to we're all in agreement. This is what this is going to look like, and we're going to learn through it, and we'll adjust that.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much. All right. If there are no other questions at the moment, then I think we'll go on to our next PCEF Committee Recruitment Subcommittee action item.
All right, this one's me.
Yes.
So just as you all know, we've been running thin here, and so on the committee, and so we've got a couple of vacancies and certainly reappointments. What we're going to speak to here is the vacancies, and so just as a reminder, it is the committee's responsibility to recommend replacement members to the mayor, who, as you heard from Deputy City Administrator Oliveira, would subsequently, we'll fill this in, would subsequently, as they make their appointment, would have to get those appointments confirmed by City Council, and those processes are being figured out right now. But those two vacancies, as you all know, have been an individual with experience in transportation decarbonization, and an individual with knowledge of the Native American history in the urban Indian experience. And so we've had those recruitments open. We're gearing up to close those, so now we can close those, begin our review process, and ideally time bringing those next recruits to the mayor and ultimately to city councils for confirmation as they finalize their process. And so, as a reminder, we have a subcommittee generally that takes on that task. That subcommittee would be responsible for reviewing applicants, interviewing finalists, and then recommending those applicants to the full PCEF committee, who then subsequently make a recommendation to the mayor. And so draft timeline here is that we will close out the recruitment here pretty soon. February, begin the review and begin interviewing applicants, ideally March. A PCEF in your March meeting, I think March 20th, PCEF committee making a recommendation, and then mayor making his appointment contingent on that council confirmation. So those are really the steps here to get you back to a whole group. And then I know we've got a whole host of other actions planned as we get close to that, but that's really what we wanted to elevate. The committee action here is just for you all to propose committee members to be part of the recruitment subcommittee. And as you all know, for subcommittees, you need at least 2 members. So.
Yes, D'Angelo, thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to express explicit interest in participating in recruitment for the committee. I think it would be great to be a part of that.
Thank you so much, Faith.
I'd be happy to do it as well.
Oh my goodness, yay, we have at least 2 volunteers for the subcommittee. Anyone else interested? All right. So, Faith, did you raise your hand again? Oh, no. Okay, down. Very good. So because we do a modified consensus decision-making process, I'm going to take the temperature of everyone here. Having these 2 people be on the subcommittee for recruitment, may I see your hand for taking a temperature check saying affirmative? Would you be agreeable to an affirmative indication that these two people should be the subcommittee? Yes, Tracy, I see your hand. Robin, Meg, Alicia, yes. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So, and yes, Renfis. So, good. I think we are in agreement for these two wonderful people to be on the recruitment subcommittee. Thank you so much. Yay! All right. Sam, anything else?
We will follow up. Raphael will follow up with you all after Raphael and Rachel to bring that in. But I think nothing else on my end. I think it's just whenever you all are ready to take action.
So we need a vote.
It's probably just
Yes.
because, yeah, you did the temperature check. So yeah.
Very, very good. May I have a nomination for D'Angelo and Faith to be on the recruitment committee?
I nominate them, D'Angelo and Faith, to be on the committee member recruitment committee.
Wonderful.
Okay.
May I have a second?
And I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Yay. Very good. We have a vote.
Cool.
Y'all are confirmed.
That is it, y'all. That is it, y'all. I think maybe I didn't have this on the agenda, but just a couple. We'll come back here in February, and when we come back in February, because we've got a little moment, we'll be coming back and revisiting the blue-green proposal in your February meeting. And so just a reminder, we sent a long email out earlier this week. We've got a range of questions and that we compiled based on what had come up in the November meeting. And so please take a look at those in the email and see if you've got any additional questions to us. Ideally, please get those back to us by Monday of next week, so that way we can forward them on to the project team, so we can make sure we're all teed up for the February meeting and can have a productive conversation then. That's the only ask. Faith, D'Angelo, we'll follow up with you both to start getting things calendar.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I would like to adjourn this meeting at 7:51 p.m. Thank you for your time, your consideration, your energy. I look forward to seeing you all next month. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
First time early in a long time, I think. Enjoy, everybody.